Hello YouTubers, Alaska Prepper here. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to explain to you from a layman's point of view, me being a layman, and I'm going to try to explain this to you in the most simple way possible. That way you can understand why it is that we are going to have an economic collapse, in addition to a financial collapse, but an economic collapse nonetheless. Now, an economic collapse, what is that? It's when your economy is in a major downturn, right? It's when your economy just pretty much stops functioning because there is no output. And I want to explain to you why it is that that's going to happen. That way, hopefully, you can understand how pertinent it is for you to be prepared for this. Now, a lot of this has to do with the housing market. I'm sure there's a lot of other factors involved, but I'm going to concentrate on the housing market really quick because the housing market supports a lot of different industries. I mean, a lot of different industries, and hires a lot of people. So if the housing market downturns really bad, a lot of people are going to be out of work, to include bankers, obviously to include builders, plumbers, electricians, appliance manufacturers, flooring manufacturers. I mean, go ahead. The list is 1,000 miles long, right? So I wanted to show you something really quick before we go ahead and do our little exercise. What you're looking at right here is the 10-year bond. This is the 10-year bond as of right now at 8:06 a.m. Alaska time on Monday, today is September 19th. Okay, and right now it is at 3.477. At this time last year, let's take a look and see what it was at this time last year. Oh my goodness, it was roughly nothing. Just a second. Oh my goodness, I have to go all the way down. So as of around this time last year, it was roughly 1.34. So it's about 2.2 percentage points higher today than it was around this time last year. So it's more than double what it was last year. And why does that matter? Why it matters is this, ladies and gentlemen, is because this bond is what the banks go by to determine how much interest they're going to charge you on your loan. You have to understand that when you take out a mortgage, you're buying that mortgage, and the interest rate is what you're paying for that mortgage. If you understand it that way, then good for you, because many people don't. So the higher the interest rate, the more that mortgage is going to cost you. So when we come to this mortgage calculator, I just enter $250,000 as a base number. And also, we're going to go ahead and put what last year's interest rate was on $250,000. So if we go over here really quick, you'll notice that last year around this same time, around September 2021, around this same time, the interest rate for a mortgage was about 3.05. So let's go ahead and enter that in there. 3.05 is what we're going to enter. I don't know if that zero will do something there. But as you can see, I put zero down payment. We just want to see what the payment would be. So let's go ahead and calculate this. 3.05 for a 30-year mortgage. Now, being that it's zero down, it's calculating it with a PMI, which is like a mortgage insurance, but we're not going to go ahead and take that number. This is the number for the actual mortgage here. Now, granted, that's not including taxes, okay? That's not including taxes or any of those other fees that you have to pay on your escrow, right? That's just including the mortgage, the interest and the principal on this mortgage. It would be $1,344. Right? So for $250,000, $1,344, and then of course all of the other stuff you add on to that, but we're concentrating on the interest rate, or the interest that you're going to pay, and the principal also. Now let's go ahead and change this to 5.57, and let me show you where I got that 5.57. I just went here and I looked at the cheapest one. Well, okay, it changed a little since the last time I changed it. So 5.60 is the cheapest interest rate that you can get right now today. So we're going to go ahead with 5.60. We're not going to do any points or anything like that. Being that it's zero down, you may have to do points anyways, but that's not part of this exercise. So 5.60. Let's go ahead and enter 5.60. And let's calculate. All right, so we went from 1718, or we went from 1344 to 1718. Now let's see what the difference is. If we have 1718 minus 1344 equals $374 a month more for the exact same house, just because the interest rate went up. Now, this may not seem like a lot to some people. However, you have to remember that the average income per household in the United States last year dropped down. It went down to, I believe it's like $50,032 or something like that. Right? So being that you make $50,000 and then after taxes and everything like that, it could be that that $374 extra that you would have to pay today towards a mortgage would disqualify you from being able to buy that mortgage. Now, it may disqualify you, or it may just make you think, I'm not going to pay that much for that house, because really what you're doing is you're buying the mortgage, not really the house. As soon as you're paying that mortgage off, that's what you bought, is that mortgage. So since if interest rates continue to go up, then that's going to discourage people from wanting to buy a house. And it's also going to encourage people that want to sell a house to sell it for a lot less. And it's going to discourage builders from building, because they're going to have to hopefully sell that house at a very high interest rate compared to just a year ago. So when that happens, ladies and gentlemen, like for example, let's say that our mortgages go up to, I remember when I was a kid, when I was just a tween, I think 10 or 12 years old. I remember my father got his first house that he ever bought, 18% interest. And at that time, I had no idea what I was listening to, but I remember the conversation that he had with my brother, because my brother was guiding him through the mortgage process. And I remember 18% interest. And years later, I think about that. I'm like, oh my goodness, 18%. Let's just go ahead and have a little fun and see what happens if that's the case. And that was, of course, during the 80s, right? When we had Volcker go in there and increase interest rates. But look at what 18% interest would do to that loan. It would triple it. It would literally triple it. But let's be a little more realistic. Let's say if it just goes up to what I think it's going to go up to here in the next year or so. Let's say it'll go up to 8 or 9% interest. Let's go 8% interest, which is very reasonable when you think about it. Let's see what it did. It went up by about $700 a month. All right, that's $8,400 a year extra that you're going to be paying on it. So ladies and gentlemen, if interest rates continue to go up, we are going to have a huge economic crash. I personally think that Jerome Powell is eventually going to do a 180 and start doing quantitative easing. I think that if he even gets interest rates, you know, the federal funds rate, which right now I think is 3.50, if he even gets them to like 5% or 5.5%, as soon as the market takes a real dive, I would say that as soon as the Dow Jones, let's say in this case, gets below 30% or has a 30% loss from like the beginning of this year, I think he will switch course, because of course anything that's a 30% loss or more is considered a crash in the market. All right, it's not just a mere minor correction, it's a crash in the market. So I think that once that happens, he's going to reverse course, he's going to bring interest rates way down, and he is going to start to print like there's never been printing before, ladies and gentlemen, inducing a whole bunch of inflation, and eventually it will become hyperinflation. Because the Fed has absolutely no choice. And the Fed and the government are one and the same as far as I'm concerned. The Fed has absolutely no choice than to reverse course eventually and start printing. If not, they will crash the entire system. And that's exactly what will happen. And remember, what do the clowns use to stay in power? They use fiat currency to stay in power. If the system crashes and the fiat currency is not there for them to abuse and stay in power, then they're not going to be there. Because a government, really, when you think about it nowadays and you look around the world, a government is its currency. Because without its currency, it can do absolutely nothing. Now, I believe that the government, this one here in the United States, already has a different system in the background. And they will crash the system or implode the system in hopes that the people will ask for that new system that they've got ready to go, that will eventually enslave us even more than what we're enslaved now. Hopefully you got something out of this. Hopefully I explained this in a way that makes sense to you. And we'll talk to you later on today.